There's a unique kind of vulnerability that comes with watching television, especially late at night. You're in your own home, a space that's supposed to be safe, and you've invited these signals, these stories, into your living room. You trust the source, but what happens when that trust is broken? When someone or something reaches through that signal and takes control? This is the world of broadcast signal intrusions, or hijacks. It's a rare but deeply unsettling phenomenon where an unauthorized party overrides a broadcast signal, replacing the expected program with their own message. Tonight, we're going to explore 4 of the most disturbing and infamous of these incidents, each one peeling back another layer of the strange and the unknown. First, we go to southern England on the evening of November 26, 1977. Viewers of the Southern television station were settling in to watch the 5 o'clock news. Andrew Gardner, a respected newsreader, was in the middle of a report about the ongoing conflicts in Rhodesia. Suddenly, his voice began to warp and distort, and the picture wobbled slightly. For nearly 6 minutes, a new voice took over the broadcast. It was deep, slow, and echoed, speaking with an unnerving calm. The voice claimed to be an extraterrestrial named Vrillin, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command. The message was a warning to the people of Earth. It spoke of false prophets and misleading leaders who were steering humanity toward disaster. The voice urged us to disarm, to destroy all our weapons of evil, and to live in peace. It mentioned that we had a short time to learn to live together, and that beings like Vrillin had been watching us for many years. It then warned that our so-called inspirations were corrupting us, and that we must turn to an inner awareness to find the right path. Finally, after almost 6 minutes of this bizarre transmission, the voice signed off, and the normal news broadcast abruptly returned. With the anchor appearing completely unaware of what had just happened, the television station's duty engineers did everything they could to stop the intrusion, but the override was too powerful. The Independent Broadcasting Authority, which oversaw UK television at the time, later explained that it was the first time such a hoax transmission had ever occurred. They believed a person with sophisticated technical knowledge had used a small, powerful transmitter to get very close to one of the broadcast authority's main transmitters, overpowering its signal. To this day, the identity of the person behind the Vrillin message remains a complete mystery. Next, we move forward a few years to the United States. On April 27, 1986, the landscape of television was changing. Satellite dishes were becoming more common, but so were subscription fees. That night, Home Box Office, or HBO, was broadcasting the film The Falcon and the Snowman. At precisely 12:32 a.m. Eastern Time, the movie suddenly vanished. In its place, the familiar SMPTE color bars appeared on the screen, the kind of test pattern you'd see when a station was off-air, but overlaid on the bars was a typed message. It read, "Good evening HBO from Captain Midnight. $12.95 a month? No way. Showtime Movie Channel, beware." For over 4.5 minutes, this message stayed on the screen, a clear and direct act of digital protest against the rising costs of satellite television. This wasn't a message from the stars. It was a message from a disgruntled consumer. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, immediately launched an investigation. They considered it a serious crime, a violation of federal law. The investigation was extensive, and the FCC received hundreds of tips from the public. They eventually narrowed their search down to a man named John R. McDougal from Ocala, Florida. McDougal was a satellite dish business owner and part-time uplink operator for a teleport company. During a break on his shift, he had simply aimed the company's massive satellite dish at the satellite used by HBO and transmitted his own signal, overpowering theirs with a much more powerful transmission. When confronted by the FBI, he immediately confessed. He was frustrated that he had to pay for HBO for his own business, when he was helping to transmit their signal in the first place. He was prosecuted, fined $5,000, and sentenced to 1 year of probation. Captain Midnight was caught, his motive was clear, and the case was closed. However, after that, the incidents start to get much stranger. The next case is perhaps one of the most chilling, not because of what happened on television, but because of how it burrowed its way into our collective consciousness. The story goes that on an unknown date in 2007, a small public broadcast station in Niobrara County, Wyoming, experienced a terrifying signal intrusion. During a normal programming block, the screen supposedly went to black. Then, strange and disturbing images began to flash. The broadcast showed a series of disembodied, computer-generated heads, all displaying bizarre and exaggerated emotions, from eerie smiles to looks of silent screaming. These heads would float across the screen, sometimes talking, but without any discernible audio. Text would occasionally appear with messages like "You can hide," and "We are watching." The intrusion reportedly continued for several minutes, the visuals becoming more abstract and unsettling. Local residents who saw the broadcast were said to have experienced headaches, nausea, anxiety, and even vomiting. Then, as quickly as it began, it was over. But here's the unsettling truth about the Wyoming incident. It never happened. It's a work of fiction, one of the earliest and most effective internet urban legends known as a creepypasta. Someone created the story and the accompanying video clips and seeded them online. But it was so well crafted, so specific with its details about the location and the alleged effects on viewers, that it took on a life of its own. It became a piece of folklore for the digital age, a story so many people believed was real that it almost didn't matter that it wasn't. Its power lies in its believability. It preys on the same fear as a real hijacked idea that something malevolent can force its way into our homes through our screens. In a way, the legend of the Wyoming incident is its own kind of hijack, an intrusion into our sense of reality. Finally, we come to the one that is, for many, the undisputed king of all broadcast hijacks. It's real, it's unsolved, and it is deeply, deeply weird. The night was November 22nd, 1987, in Chicago. At about 9:14 p.m., sports anchor Dan Roan was presenting the highlights of the Chicago Bears' victory on the WGN-TV 9 o'clock news. For about 15 seconds, the signal flickered, and the screen was taken over by a person wearing a Max Headroom mask. The figure bobbed and weaved in front of a corrugated metal background, while a buzzing, distorted audio track played. The engineers at WGN headquarters were able to switch to another transmitter and cut the intrusion short. Dan Roan was visibly confused, but commented, "Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I." But the hijacker wasn't done. Just 2 hours later, at around 11:15 p.m., Chicago's public television station, WTTW, was airing an episode of Doctor Who. The show cut to black, and then he was back. This time, the intrusion lasted for a full, excruciating 90 seconds. The figure in the Max Headroom mask was there again, but this time the audio was clearer, though no less bizarre. He rocked back and forth, shouting, "He's a freaky nerd," and "Catch the wave," a reference to a popular Coca-Cola slogan. He hummed the theme song to the cartoon Clutch Cargo. He held up a Pepsi can, even though Max Headroom was a spokesperson for Coke. He mumbled about WGN journalist Chuck Swirsky, claiming he was better than him. The entire thing was a chaotic, nonsensical rant. Then, the video took an even more bizarre turn. The man disappeared from the screen for a moment, and we see his exposed backside. An accomplice, partially visible off-screen and wearing what appears to be a dress, begins spanking him with a fly swatter. The man screams in a distorted, pained voice before the hijackers finally cut their signal. And the bewildered viewers were returned to their regularly scheduled episode of Doctor Who. The FCC and the FBI launched a full-scale investigation, but they had very little to go on. The signal had been sent from a location that was difficult to trace. Somewhere in the line of sight of WTTW's transmitter atop the Sears Tower. Despite a nationwide manhunt and decades of speculation, the identities of the people behind the Max Headroom incident have never been discovered. They got away with it. There was no political message, no protest, no grand warning to humanity. It was just pure, anarchic chaos, beamed directly into thousands of homes. And that lack of a reason, that senseless violation, is perhaps the most disturbing part of all. These incidents remind us that the signals we invite into our homes can sometimes carry something else with them, a glimpse into the bizarre, the unsettling, and the profoundly unexplained. If you appreciate these kinds of deep dives into the unexplained, hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell ensures you won't miss our next video. We read through all of the comments, and the community's insights are always a huge part of the channel. Thank you for watching.